Brought to you by Penguin. Of the Social Contract and Other Political Writings by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, translated by Quentin Hoare and read by John Kapansa and Heather Long, with an introduction and prefatory notes by Christopher Bertram, read by Roy Mcmillan. Introduction. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is one of the dominant intellectual figures of the modern era. According to the cover of a special edition of the French magazine Le Nouvel Observateur, he invented childhood, nature, equality, democracy, and the cult of the self. Others have credited Rousseau as the great forerunner of Marx and Freud, or as the theorist of a participatory and deliberative democracy. Yet he has also been vilified as a charlatan, and accused of being the inspiration for the Great Terror of the French Revolution, for totalitarian democracy, and thus, indirectly, for the evils of communism and fascism. Today, happily, we are to some extent free of the ideological blinkers of the Cold War, and can assess Rousseau on his own merits rather than through the distorting lens of subsequent conflicts. And those gifts are considerable. Rousseau was an unusual man with unusual gifts. Difficult to get along with, certainly mentally unbalanced, he was a Genevan outsider in the salons of Paris, a man who rejected religious orthodoxy but could not bring himself to accept the scientism and skepticism of the Enlightenment. A late-developing autodidact, a dabbler in many fields and an expert in some. A lover of freedom but a pessimist about its realization, Rousseau was able to delineate many of the characteristic pathologies of modernity when the modern age was still being born. Those who encounter Rousseau today are likely to get to know him through just one or two facets of his achievement. Students of philosophy or political science, for example, will probably read of the social contract and, perhaps, the discourse on the origins of inequality. But Rousseau contributed to a wide variety of fields. His Confessions, together with his other autobiographical writings such as the Paranoid Dialogues and the elegiac Reveries of the Solitary Walker, support a claim that he invented autobiography in its modern sense. By giving an interior account of how Rousseau became himself, an account predicated on the notion that a person's psyche could be shaped and fixed by small but traumatic incidents, Rousseau made possible modes of thinking about the self that later found literary expression in writers like Proust, scientific form in Freudian psychoanalysis, and are with us today in modern obsessions with therapies of the self. His writings on childcare and education, particularly Émile, have also been tributaries to the same stream. How can we bring up our children to lead happy and fulfilled lives in a world of conflict and competition? It's a question that millions of parents have asked themselves in the West over the past 2 centuries, but Rousseau was one of the first people to attempt an answer. By trying to think through the elementary forms of psychological development and the meaning and character of the emotions, not only did Rousseau begin child psychology, but he also prepared a stream of philosophical exploration of related themes, with Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit being one prominent result. Rousseau was also a novelist, with his work Julie, or The New Eloise, being among the most popular creations of the 18th century, scandalizing and titillating both bourgeoisie and aristocracy, but additionally providing a further vehicle for Rousseau's wider psychological concerns. If all that were not enough, we can mention his contribution to music, both as a composer and a theorist. Rousseau participated in one of the most significant culture wars episodes of the past 3 centuries, the Querelle des Bouffons, in which he and his friends championed the aesthetic of Italian opera against the pomposity and bombast of its French counterpart. Yet, despite condemning French as inherently unmusical, he composed an opera in the language, Le Devin du Village, which was the smash hit of 1752, earned him the offer of a pension for life from the king. Rousseau declined it, and stayed in the repertoire for 100 years. As a music theorist and critic, Rousseau became one of the principal contributors to Diderot and d'Alembert's Encyclopédie, and wrote his own Dictionary of Music before, at the very end of his life, befriending and corresponding with the great reformer of opera, Gluck. We can even add to this list of wider interests
Sample complete. Ready to continue?